Hello everyone, welcome back to another Black Ops 2 video. I hope you all had a wonderful weekend, because today we are going to be looking at more Black Ops 2 maps out of bounds. So this, as far as multiplayer goes, is the halfway point. There will be a total of 9 episodes dedicated to multiplayer, and this is the 5th one, so from here we're going to be doing all the DLC map packs one by one. So, anyway, with all that said, hope you enjoy. So Turbine's the first one on our list today, and there's not a whole lot here, surprisingly. I thought there would be much more going on, but I'll walk you through what I found. So the building behind the spawn is surprisingly cardboard, I guess you could say. I went to take a look expecting something a little more, but no, it's mostly a one-sided texture minus the walls, so that was kind of peculiar. Next up was the hill behind some of the turbines, and some of it has collision, a small portion of it does, but the moment you walk a little too far and you fall right through. It was interesting that a small portion of it did in fact have collision though compared to everything else, but I kind of wonder why it's so inconsistent there. You might be asking what's going on beyond the cliff. Well, we're here to take a look at that. So a lot of the turbines here are moving and working properly, and then there's this one right here which I found really interesting. It doesn't even sit on the top of the pole like all the others do, it just sits below. I thought that was a little interesting, if not weird. But when you're down here in a section like this, you get a feel for just how small Turbine feels when you look at its outside section. There's not a lot to this map. I decided to look behind Turbine altogether, and surprisingly, these aren't completely 2D. They have an extremely low polygon count. You can see here that they do have a little bit of geometry to them, even if the back of them is completely flat. It's almost 2D, but not quite. That's the thing about maps like Turbine with a bunch of elevations and stuff like that. You can get away with a minimalistic approach because you're never high enough to see what's beyond the cliffs to begin with. So I could definitely understand why there's not as much resources outside of Turbine as, say, Drone, Express, even Aftermath for that matter. One of my favorite things to do is follow the paths of places that you can't normally go because you would die trying to reach them, and this place is no different. So of course it collides with a mountain, or whatever you want to call it, a boulder, whatever. But it does connect to the map, which is cool. And this path over here, yeah, it's a little bit more open, I find. But again, you can't access it because you will die. Surprisingly though, the collision is pretty sound, which is nice for a change. I have a hard time remembering that a barricade is even here, so what's past it? Well, if we travel up the path, we will realize it collides into another boulder mountain thingy. Yeah, ain't that something. So, interesting fact about Yemen, not only is it next on our list, but technically speaking it is the last of the base game. So I dive into action right away. I mean, I'm not wasting any time. But interestingly, the bottom of Yemen around the cliffs does in fact have collision. So you can stroll around on it. And a lot of the water does also have proper physics, I guess you could say. Would you call that collision? I don't know. Point is though, it does mostly behave properly. So you can go for a good swim in the water, and a pretty fast one. Now keep in mind, I had low gravity, super jump, super speed, and timescales all activated at once, hence why I am going as fast as I am right now. So looking at the actual elements of the outbound section, you got this weird sort of texture on this rock here with this building that floats up in the air, obviously neither of which have anything going on inside them, and the top of that's one-sided. But, interestingly, there is a lot of room to walk on here. It's pretty cool. It's got a little bit more to it than Turbine, I think. Just taking that view, that whole island is looking pretty good. I'm impressed. So as I typically do in my fashion, I want to see where the roads and paths outside the map lead to, and of course it collides with rocks and boulders and all of that. However, if you do follow it, you will find that it connects with the map properly. It's not just a path on the side to make it feel more lively. It is lively. It does make sense, mostly. So, if you follow along, you'll pass some buildings which will eventually take you to one of the spawns, which is pretty cool. I wanted to showcase what was going on with the buildings down below as well, with the road that passed by, and While there's not a whole lot going on here, it does at least look decent and has a face on all sides, unlike that building just behind the spawn in Turbine. I'm just kidding. No shade to be thrown at Treyarch. Not yet, at least. We're in Black Ops 2, so we can hold off. Shitty transitions aside, though, this island right here was actually pretty fascinating. Even though it's just rocks and trees, it looks decent even up close, so that I'm happy with. Beyond the roads and paths outside every map, I'm always interested to see what is going on beyond the inaccessible doorways. And for the most part, and unfortunately, there wasn't really anything going on. Until I looked through this door. There's actually some geometry inside, and while it doesn't have collision, I have to wonder why it's there. It's a cool find, no less. So recently, I played a game with canine units on this map, and they went back here when they were done their canining, and, yeah, while the buildings themselves aren't very solid, the ground is. And I want to take a look where this would lead me. Even though I just fell through the boulder there. I then resurfaced on top of this elevation, and it's kind of a nice spot. There's a lot of plantation, a fair amount of surface just to run along. It was fun. I was also interested in this gate behind the spawn, close to where we just were, and yeah, the stairs has collision, but as soon as you step off of them, they don't. Yet the collision comes back and you can actually walk through the door somewhat, so I'm a little bit confused about what this section is supposed to be, but it's cool. I like it. I also decided to look past this other gate, and yeah, I fell through just the same way, but there was no secret entrance I could walk through or anything like that. Still, pretty cool place. A couple unique things about this little center building right here. You can fall through it to the bottom, which is pretty cool, so there's no complete invisible barrier, but just the same, you can stand on part of it. And if you fly to the top, what you'll maybe realize is a little bit hard to notice, is that the ceiling of the building, the collision, is a little bit higher than the ceiling of the rest of the map. So the building is technically taller if you were to look at its invisible ceiling. I got one more stop for us, and that's down in this cliff. It's completely dark, so let's see if there's anything worthy of gushing about down here. So the thing is, we're not even on the water level anymore, we're actually under it. So it's like a hole within a hole, and it is completely dark down here. On our way down, we did fall through some rocks with no collision, so you can see Yemen up there, but it's difficult to. It's a deep hole, what can I say?
That's what she said.
No, we're past that. Shut up, get out of here. So stick around to the end because I have a little bit of a surprise to show you. But firstly, I want to see what was going on with this robot right here. And there's not a whole lot to see here. It's a little bit too dark to get a good view, but he's cool no less. So how did the squeaky clean floors reflect? Well, it doesn't. They have another area underneath that's modeled to replicate the area on the top, so it looks like a reflection. But there is a dead giveaway. If you look down here, there is an entrance to another room on the tops, but not the bottom for either side. So say what you will about them not doing the job perfectly, keep in mind replicating 2 extra rooms probably would have been a little bit more challenging, so the way it is, I still think it's really fascinating. So in Black Ops 1 we had rooms like this, and I was curious to see if Black Ops 2 had a semblance of that something, and unfortunately it didn't, no matter how hard I looked. Unfortunately inside this building there wasn't much, but I found it a little bit odd that we could see the windows so clearly from the inside as well as out. It was still interesting though. This one part I'm pretty confused about, so if somebody can explain this to me, please do, but I would swear the RCXD track has selective collision. I don't know if that's a thing, but yeah, the ramps were only programmed to use the RCXD. I don't know if it's because of different properties or something like that, but I'd like to know a more detailed explanation behind that if anybody knows anything. Also, I wanted to look at the bunker too, and yeah, there was collision down here, but it's more relating to under the map itself rather than it being the bunker's collision. Still worth checking out here. And it's also worth noting that the orange house does have the same sort of method of doing the reflection as the blue. So that is also really cool. Also, don't mind my girlfriend. She was messaging me at this time. The bus in Nuketown 2025 actually has a proper interior, it's just really dark. And it's a little bit hard to get into because the game will actively try to push you out, so you gotta be wary about that, but I kept fighting it and I wanted to see what the front looked like, but I was really having trouble just getting the right angle. while a minimalistic approach from the inside, it's still commendable that they even gave it an interior. I was impressed that the inside of the moving van also had a proper interior. Not to the best standards, but it didn't matter. They didn't have to go this far. They could have just completely blurred it out, and that would have just been that. But no, they decided to give it an interior, and it was really cool. Alright, no more screwing around. What is going on outside the map this time? And yeah, a lot of things don't really have collision out here, which is the unfortunate thing, because I would have loved to have climbed up on some buildings and stuff, but you can only ask for so much. While a neat-looking building, its collision's very absent, because even half the floor is missing it. Still thought it was worth checking out, though. So I decided to explore the area a bit, and yeah, obviously, collision's not going to be this far at all, but it was still cool just to get a proper glimpse of everything that surrounded Nuketown. Seeing all the buses, all the unique vehicles, the unique shape of buildings, and everything like that. I feel like Nuketown is a very imaginative place, and that totally holds true here. I love looking at Nuketown. I'm sure you guys do too. There's a reason why I put it as number 2 in my top 5 most beautiful maps, which you should check out if you haven't yet. So 2D buildings are in fact canon. Why? Because it's a bomb testing site and they think that 2D buildings are just as worthy to test as the proper 3D ones and the low resolution ones. So yeah, they made it canon. I didn't do it, they did. It's really nice just to get a sight of everything that's going on just outside the map, because that's where the buildings are the most crazy and out there. So this structure right here boggles my mind, because you'd think they would include it as something more visible from the map itself, but unfortunately not. And that's the stadium over here. That's right, they have a stadium here. What's disappointing about the stadium is not the stadium itself, but it's the fact that I can't promise you'll see it even with Codcaster. Even if you're in spectator mode, I can't guarantee you'll be able to see it from the map, which is a really big disappointment in my eyes. It's such a cool part of the map, and I wish it was integrated into it, or at least more visible. However, on the upside of things, it does give people like me and others who make content similar to me a chance to open people's eyes and appreciate what's just beyond our sight. So, at least we have that. At least we have tools to acknowledge it in the first place. So this took me about 15 minutes to do, but once I had finished, I created something I'd like to call art. Hopefully you like it. Behold the army of mannequins in the map that is Nuketown 2025, performing a sort of ritual on a mannequin that had lost her head. Yeah, it's kind of terrifying, I know, but it was totally worth it. Anyway, this is the note I wanted to end this video on, as morbid and creepy as it may come off as. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I hope that you all have a wonderful day. Take care for now, and goodbye.